What's up everybody, this is Tyler here with Savvy Hut Tutorials. Today we'll be talking a little bit about Photoshop. I'll go through and kind of explain the basics of what you would see when you first get into Photoshop. It's very easy to learn. So as you can see, here's the final product on your screen now, and I will simply go through step by step as always and explain exactly how I created the final product. Without further ado, let's get this tutorial started.
Photoshop Friday.
Alright, the first thing we will do is simply go up here to our File button, click File and New. This dialog box will pop up and you can name what your next project will be called, as well as enter in the height and width dimensions of it. Now the resolution, you can kind of tell in the background here of my last document, was a bit low. I think that was set to the 72. So we'll increase that. Let's say for example you wanted this to be an HD picture. All you would simply do is add a 1920 by 1080. Now keep in mind, if this is the first time you've used Photoshop, it may be in inches. I typically keep mine set to pixels. And for the resolution here, we'll crank that up to about 300. The next thing you'll see here is color mode. The RGB stands for red, green, blue. Keep the background contents to white and don't mess with anything else here in the advanced section. For the title, we'll go ahead and create this tutorial for now. It doesn't affect anything that we'll do other than keep everything organized. So I'll click OK, and you'll see up here in the tab it created, this is my tutorial, my new project I just created. It also kept the old one, so I still have this to refer back to. So the first thing I did was actually just add a color to the back of my document. I'll left click on this, as this is my color picker. If you left click the foreground color, you may start off with a different color, but you'll see a color palette. If you left click on this side, it's going to give you a color hue that you can choose from. To create what I had in the beginning, I'm going to choose something around this blue color here, and you'll see it's still white until you go in and choose something a little bit closer to what you are looking for. Web colors would be if you're creating a website, you'll see it breaks it down to specific web colors that show up best on different browsers, different computers, and that kind of thing. We don't need that for what we're doing. This would be about the shade of blue that I'm using. If you want to get it exactly, you can enter in the hexadecimal value, which is 3399FF. Again, this kind of information is usually only necessary for web design, but if you enter it in, you'll also get the exact same color blue for this tutorial. So I'll click OK, and you'll see it did nothing to the document yet, but what I'll do is go over, left click and hold it down. You'll see I have the gradient tool currently selected, but let me hover while I have it left click to the paint tool and let go. Now you see I have a paint bucket tool option available. And what I want to do from here is simply go anywhere in this white box that I created and left click. Now it changed the entire background to the blue color that I chose as my color. What we want to do from here is add a vignette, or that where the edges sort of darken out. A lot of professional movies and films as well as pictures do this kind of effect. So what we'll do to create it is go up to layer, and you'll see over here in your layer section we're currently on background. If you want to double click that, you can just call it BG for background and hit enter. That's simply to unlock that layer so you can do other things with it, but for now we'll keep it as BG for background and go up here to our layer selection. Hover over new and go to layer. Another way to do that, and a good thing to do, is to learn all the short hotkeys. So Shift Control N. For now I'll left click and you'll see it's asking me what I want to call this. I'll type in vignette. Again, this won't affect the design, but it will just help me organize, and click OK. Now I have got the vignette layer on top of my background layer. Obviously nothing changed because it's simply a blank layer. So what I will do, and if you do not have your tools visible, what you can do is go to your Windows section here. This applies to any different windows that you're trying to find that maybe aren't currently on your project. So you'll see I have tools checked. If they were unchecked, they'd be gone. But if they were checked, which is what I want them to be, they'll be here on the left-hand side of my screen. Now, you can move those around, and sometimes this becomes a pain if you accidentally move it, because then you'll try to slam it back into the side here, but you'll see it doesn't necessarily snap right away. You have to hover out just a little bit. You'll see this gray bar sort of slide forward, then you can let go and it'll pop back in. So in order to create that vignette, there are many different ways to do this. One easy way though is to simply add a gradient. So on my paint bucket tool, I'll left click, hold it down, and go to my gradient tool. So let go of the left click button. Here in the top, you'll see what's going on with the tool I have selected. And right now it's the gradient tool. So there's a linear gradient, a radial gradient, angle gradient, reflected gradient, diamond gradient. What we'll use is the radial gradient. Now, if I went in here and just tried to draw it and just throw it on there, it's not going to look anywhere near what I want it to do. So let me change this. Here are the different presets. You should probably have quite a few of them. There may be a few that you don't have yet, which is fine. You can always create new gradients. This is a standard one, just black to white. We will actually only use this. If you were to create your own specific gradient, all you would do is double click, and here you can choose whatever different color, and it'll change, from that color to whatever your other color is. For now though, we just want black, and then make sure your other color is set to white here. All right. Next we'll go to OK, and we've got that selected here. Now, there are a couple ways to make this look good. I'm not going to worry about centering it until later. So what I mean by that is, one way to do this is to center it by left clicking on your rulers here. And if your rulers are not showing, go up to your View tab and simply go down here to Rulers, or hit Control R on a PC. Next, if you hover over the ruler, left click, hold it down, you can drag it onto your project. And you see mine is snapping to the middle here. If yours is not automatically snapping, and I just let that go so you can kind of see where the very center is vertically, and I can do that as well horizontally. But let me show you really quick. If your snap is not checked, it will not snap, which can be good for some things, but if you want it to snap right to the very center, you will want to make sure this is checked. So that's the snap section. Again, that's in the View tab. But I'll also do that horizontally here. You'll kind of feel it snap. Looks like I passed it. There it is. All right, so now I've got it broken up perfectly in the center here. The next thing we will do is go over to our gradient tool that we've already set up, left click to make sure it's selected, and you'll see it pops up and changes up here to let you know your gradient tool is selected. Go to the very center of your document here, and you can kind of see we've created somewhat of a crosshair. If you go to the center, you can left click and hold it down and then push. You'll see it kind of goes anywhere. If, like, let's say you want it to go a straight line. Obviously, with the rulers out, it will automatically snap. But if you did not have the rulers out, another way to snap to a 90 degree, 45 degree angle, something like that, is to hold down the shift key. So if you hold down shift, you'll see it automatically jumps into the closest angle. So that's going to be my 90 degree. If I pull it down, it'll eventually snap to a 90 or a 45 degree angle here, and as well as, another 90 degree, 180. I'm going to drag this gradient out to about the middle of my right two blocks and let go. Now you see what it created here is a big white space around and a black space in the center. Now we want the opposite of that. So what we can do instead of going in and quickly editing the gradient is simply back out by holding Control Alt Z for the PC and going up to this button up here which says Reverse. If you left click that, it will put everything basically reverse. It'll make the black into white and the white into black. So I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. Hold shift down, drag it to about the center. And now you see the entire edge around here is black and the center is white. That's what we want. Left click on your select tool and we want to zoom out a bit. There are a couple ways to do it. You'll notice down here there's a percent marker where you can type in what percent you want to be at as far as zooming. So if you wanted to be at, let's say, 75%, you hit enter, it's going to zoom you into 75%. However, that's a bit tedious. Another way to do that is the Control minus or Control plus buttons for the PC. So if I hit Control, hold Control down, and hit the minus button, it's going to zoom me out 66.67, 50%, 33%, and so on and so forth. Also, if you want to zoom in beyond 100, you can do that as well. So what we'll do is hold the Control button down and hit the minus button at least once. I'll actually go ahead and do it twice. So we're at 50%. Take your vignette and make sure it's selected over here in your layers section, and then hit Control T. So hold Control down and push T. That'll bring up your transform. You'll see 8 hollow squares appear around the border of your document. If you take one, you can obviously grab any angle from this point and just sort of drag it around and do whatever you want to it. I'll hit Control Z to back out, make sure I didn't change anything. But if we want both sides to come out equally, what we need to do is hover over it so the double angle appears and hold down the Alt button. This is going to evenly spread both sides out at the same time. So holding down Alt, I will left click whenever I show the double arrow on this line here between the two hollow squares. Left click, hold it down, and drag it. You'll see it's beginning to spread out both the left and the right side. I'm going to do that to about here. There's no specific distance. It's kind of whatever you feel looks okay. So I'll do it to about there, and I'll also do it to my top and bottom. So hold Alt, left click, and drag the bottom down, and that's fine. Now to apply this, all you have to do is hit Enter. And now the transformation that I created is now applied to my project. The next thing I want to do is obviously bring in my background color. And there are a couple different modes you'll see here. Got a lot of different options. It's really up to you what you like best. Feel free to mess around and see what these other options do. Let's say I choose multiply. Another thing you can do is while it's in blue highlighted here, you can use the scroll wheel on your mouse to sort of go through quickly all the different options that may be available. You can see it's changing it here as well as on the project. And again, I'm going to scroll back up here to multiply for now. So that's the option I chose. Whatever you wanted to choose, it won't affect what we do next other than the background. It will look obviously however you created it. The final thing we will do is add some text to this. And for this, you actually don't need to manually add a new layer. You'll just simply go to your text, which is the T located right over here on the left-hand side in your tools section. Left click that. And now once you have it selected, you'll see you've got the very familiar eye that shows that you're about to create some text. Left click, hold it down, and drag it over to wherever you want it to be. It doesn't have to be perfect. We'll center it up in a second. So you can see my last text here was huge, so that's not going to fit. If I start typing, it's going to be, wow, really big. What I want to do is go up here to my tools section for the text editor. You'll see I have a text right now you may not have available, so I'll go to Arial, which is what I used in this tutorial. I'm sure everybody has that. And my font over here right now is 154. You'll see the maximum it goes to is 72. That's obviously not the very top you can go. You can go very, very high. I'll go and click on my 72 for now. That works for me. If you did want to go higher, all you would do is click into this. You could either type it in or use the scroll wheel to scroll up. And it's hard to notice how big the text will be until you actually type it out. So what I will do is type out my Savvy Hut now. Hit Enter to go down one. Now I typed in hut. You'll see it did not appear, and the reason for that is I did not give it enough space to jump down here and create the hut. So all you do is go to where you see the double dashed line here, or the border of my text layer, and drag it down. Now you'll see the hut appeared because I gave it enough room. The same applies if you go too far in this way. It'll cut off letters, that kind of thing. So if you're running into that issue, just make sure your text space is wide enough. There's really no reason not to make it wider because you can always adjust the text once you type it out. So let me highlight all this, and just to make it simple, I'll go up here to my Align tool. You'll see it's currently left aligned. I'll center align it. So that automatically puts it in the center of my text layer. The next thing I'll do is go up to my Select tool and left click that. You'll see the dotted line goes away, but I'm still selecting my Savvy Hut text layer. In order to get that exactly where I want it, I'll simply left click and hold it, and you can see you can drag it around. With your rulers and your snap tool on, it will snap to a specific point. Obviously the center here is snapping very well, but I'm not sure how high or low I want it to go. It's going to snap to the center of your text layer. And what I mean, if you go back into this, you'll see the bottom here is a lot of extra space. So it is snapping. You can see that little anchor point in the very center. It is snapping exactly to the middle. But if I wanted to really get precise, I could drag this up as far as it will go, which is right below the hut there. You'll see it automatically move the anchor point back up to the very center of my text layer. I'll go back to Select, and drag it down to there. Now it's perfectly centered in the very middle center of my document. The final thing I did, I think, was capitalize all my letters. That's not important, but just to make it look exactly like the way I created it, I will do that. All I did was highlight a specific section in my text layer, and I'll type in capital letters. And you can see, because I had it all center aligned, it automatically put that in the center for me. Now I'll go back to my select tool, make sure everything's all lined up and centered. And the final thing I'll do with my Savvy Hut text layer selected is go up to my 3D section. Now this is only available in Adobe CS5 and higher. I'm currently in Adobe CS5, so if you have anything like that or later, you'll be good to go. I'll left click my 3D layer and go down to Repose. You'll see when I hover over that, there'll be a couple different options available. Right now the others are grayed out because I am on a text layer. I can change that by converting it to an object and everything like that, but for now, we will just only need the text layer within the 3D Repose. So left click on that. It's going to convert it, rasterize it, which is totally fine. So click yes. And you'll see here that it converted it to a 3D text layer. Depending on how powerful your computer is, feel free to mess with all these different options. It may take a little while to load if you do change it. You can see here on the left, this is how you would change different colors. For example, if I wanted it to be a bright green color, I can left click and it's going to look like grass on the front of my text layer. And you'll see it can do bevel 1. We'll do the sides, and I'll change the sides to, let's just make it like a brick looking kind of thing. That looks terrible. We'll do this. That's a little better. And I'll actually go back to my white marble look here. So that's what the different materials will do. The next thing you will notice down here is the extrude section. As far as depth goes, it's pretty self-explanatory. If you drag this out, it's going to be further. It's going to be a deeper 3D layer basically. I'll keep that at 1 for now. And I will not cover too much more about the 3D layer here because you can kind of go into a lot of depth about different options and ways to make it look really, really good. But let's say, for example, you wanted to take this 3D text and put it into an image. Down here, you'll notice a little eye symbol with little crosshairs. These are 3D options that help you sort of adjust your layer even more. So one very useful one is called the 3D ground plane. You'll notice right now it's not turned on, but if I left click that, it's going to create a 3D world for me basically. It's going to show me exactly where in line my 3D Savvy Hut text layer lays. So if you took some photography pictures of like a cool street and you wanted to put your name on the street and add some shadows or something like that, this is the layer you would want to have activated so you could kind of go around and see where your text would sit on the ground plane. So for now, I will keep that again as we had it before and turn this back off. So I'll probably create another tutorial that goes more into depth about different ways to make your 3D text layer look a lot cooler. Or as well as object layers. You can obviously take object layers, make them 3D and add them to pictures, that type of stuff. For now though, what we've got is what we needed for the tutorial. So I'll click OK and apply this to my text layer. So here you can see it changed our Savvy Hut text layer to a 3D object layer. In your 3D layer, you can always get back into the adjustments by either double clicking it, or if you go up here to your tools section, if it's not listed already, there is a 3D scene button that you can check out and get back in here and start moving it around again. Again, we'll keep it kind of right there. But what I did finally is add sort of a back shadow to this. One way to do it is simply double clicking and it'll bring up my layer styles. You'll see the drop shadow button here, inner shadow, all those different things. You can left click just to add a very simple drop shadow to the background and left click it to see what its different properties are. You can check out the angle. It's at 120 degrees right now. If I wanted to move that to like a 90-degree angle, you can tell it adjusts it really slightly in here. I can adjust the distance by dragging that up a little bit further away. I can change the spread by increasing the pixels as well as the size to kind of make it boost out and create a shadow in the background. That's not the version of the shadow we want to create though, so I'll left click on that just to get rid of it. And the other options I'll quickly go over right now. There's the inner shadow, which does it inside your text layer or whatever it is. It could be a normal layer. This is just creating a shadow inside that layer instead of behind it. There's a glow feature. You can add different spread obviously here, as well as the size if you wanted your letters to glow. The next thing you'll see here is the inner glow. Same concept as the inner shadow. Everything is going on inside the text layer, just like the shadow, the inner shadow is going. Bevel and emboss, if you left click that, it just adds a very simple bevel. Contour increases that as well as changes the shape of it a little bit. Satin obviously darkens the inside of the letters. The color overlay will just change the actual overall color. You'll see it does also eliminate the 3D look. I mean, it still looks 3D-ish, but you can tell the left and right shadows and the lighting has all been blended into one solid color. We'll use that a little bit later, but for now, that's all it does is just a color overlay. The gradient overlay, at first it creates just a solid gradient. Again, it almost removes most of the 3D concept part of it, the shadows, the lighting. If you wanted to bring the shadows and lighting back, you could go up here to your blend mode and do something more like overlay. And you'll see it's still a bit bright, so you could turn down the opacity to, you know, like 55% or something like that, or even change the gradient itself if you wanted different colors to come across. You can kind of see the background there changes based on the gradient that I chose. Another thing you can do is the pattern overlay. It looks kind of weird when you do it in a 3D thing. You can change the blend mode again to overlay, so it adds a little bit of the 3D back, but this is a really good feature to use for when you're creating backgrounds and that kind of thing to add in. Obviously, you can import a ton of different patterns. And the stroke layer will just put an outline around the whole 3D text layer. It won't look 3D either, and I'll show you what I mean. If I left click that, it just put a fine solid black stroke around my text layer. I can increase that by going in the size and increasing the pixels as much as I want if I wanted to create that kind of effect. I won't put anything on it. I just wanted to show you the different layer styles for this because we will use one. Now I've just simply closed out, made sure nothing is selected. If I go over to my layer, I'll hit Control J. And what Control J does is it duplicates the layer and everything, all of its properties, everything like that. So if I did include layer styles, it would have included those as well. So what I want to do is take my Savvy Hut copy by left clicking and holding it, drag it below the Savvy Hut original text that we created. Let me double click in here and just change the name from copy to shadow. So now it's my Savvy Hut shadow. Obviously it won't look any different. If I hold shift down, I can left click and drag it so it's right below my Savvy Hut layer. You'll see that we've created a layer right behind our layer that's exactly the same. What I will do is go in here, double click on the layer itself and go over to color overlay. You'll see it's red right now. Left click and then click on the red color. You'll see my color overlay selector has popped up. I'm going to go all the way down to the black. So it's 000000 for the hexadecimal value. Left click OK. And again, click OK. So now we've created a Savvy Hut shadow layer where it's just a solid black overlay color. Now that doesn't look too much like a shadow unless you have very harsh lights on it. So now that I've got my solid black layer here that used to be my Savvy Hut text, I want to create a new layer. Control Shift N to do that quickly. You'll see the layer pops up. Let's just call that shadow. And hit enter. There are a couple things that my 3D layer will prevent me from doing, and one of them is what I'm about to do right now, which is add some blur effect to my back solid background layer. Okay? So what I'll do is I'll select my Savvy Hut shadow and then also hold Control down and click my shadow layer. So now both my layers are selected. If I right click on my shadow layer, I can click on Merge Layers. What that does is it removes all the features of my Savvy Hut shadow 3D text layer and puts it on a flat layer. So now everything has been flattened out. What I'll do from here is go up to my Filter tab, left click, and go down to my Blur section. You'll see I've got a couple different options to choose from, but for this tutorial, let's choose Gaussian Blur. Left click on that, and you'll see it begins to create sort of a blur effect in the background. You can adjust how blurry it is by the radius and pixels. You can drag this or type in a specific amount. Adjust this to what you feel you like best, but I felt for this tutorial that 10 pixels of a radius was fine. So I will click OK to apply that to my layer. The next thing I'll do is hit Control T. To really get in and customize this shadow, and something you can't do if you just add a drop shadow, while you have it selected in this transformation mode, right click the layer and go to warp. You'll see it breaks it up into rule of thirds, which is kind of cool. You can go in and really adjust the shadow layer, and shadows, believe it or not, really show depth. So if I wanted to take this and just drag the middle down, I'm left click and holding on to this layer right here. I'll actually zoom in a bit. If I wanted to left click and drag this down a bit, you'll see my shadow will go down in the middle, but also swoops up on the ends here. And I can actually go to the little points and drag those back in if I wanted to create this effect, just to make it look a little bit different and stick out more in the middle. I can do the same thing here and just drag it down a bit, as well as here. So now to apply this to my shadow layer, I'll just hit enter. Other than me misspelling Savvy Hut, this is the same product that I showed you in the beginning of the tutorial. So if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the section below. Don't forget to subscribe for more awesome tutorials on music, graphic design, web design, all that kind of good stuff. And I appreciate you guys for sticking with it. All right, bye. I'll go ahead and show you exactly what we'll be creating in the end, and quickly go through, create it, explain what I'm doing, and how you can create the same effect. All right, here it goes.